Well, here we are again. Really hope you're doing well. Really hope that things are going good in your life. Thank you for stopping in if you have. We're going to be trying to go through Sekiro's Mortal Journey once again. I actually have not played this game basically since my last stream. So I'm a little bit rusty, so if it goes poorly, I have that built-in excuse, which, is a nice thing to give yourself when you can. Yeah, we're just going to give this another try. I did this last time, and it didn't go very well for a couple reasons. The first one being that my personal audio was really low, and it was really hard to hear me, and nobody told me, so I couldn't fix it. The other thing was that just the gameplay didn't go very well. We didn't perform very admirably. So we're gonna try to remedy both of those things. I've turned my mic volume up. I've turned the game volume down just a bit. So hopefully I come through a little bit clearer. If I'm a little bit loud right now, when I get actually into the game and that gets going, the audio will make a little bit more sense, I hope. And yeah, as for playing well, I guess there's not a lot of preparation that we can do in that regard beyond just hoping that we can rely on our skills and actually play a little bit better this time. I think last time I died to like the owl and I died to Gyobu and Lady Butterfly. Like it was just kind of embarrassing to be performing as poorly as I was. So we can do better this time. If you did watch the previous stream, I'm going to be narrating the boss fights in the same way that I did last time, and I will probably repeat myself a lot, mostly because, again, I assume that nobody was really able to hear much of what I was actually saying as far as the advice and strategies that I was giving out last time. So if you did watch the previous stream and you actually managed to pick up anything that I said, do expect me to repeat myself quite a bit throughout the rest of this stream. Okay. With that all out of the way, let's go ahead and get into this. And we are off. If you can hear me breathing, I'm very sorry about that. I took a knee to the face as a really young child, and the nose didn't heal quite right. So it's actually very difficult for me to breathe out of my nose under normal circumstances. So if it sounds strained, that's only because it is. And if that makes it hard for you to watch the stream, I totally get it. No hard feelings. There are other people who stream as well, and I'm sure you will find someone to amuse you if you are looking for streaming entertainment. Totally cool. Clicked on the stream and are watching it for some reason and don't really know anything about Sekiro. This is a video game that was developed by From Software, which is the same company that made the Dark Souls games, Demon's Souls, Elden Ring, Armored Core, King's Field, a bunch of games. And this is kind of one of the spin-off games that they've made in the midst of making all of the Dark Souls games. Much like Bloodborne was, where it's similar in some ways to everything else they're doing, but it's different in significant ways. So the central mechanic in this game is the deflect. So if I hold the block button when an enemy is attacking, I will block them, naturally enough. If I press block just before the attack lands, though, I will deflect them instead. Right there, that was a deflect. That was a block. So when you hear that kind of dull thud sound, that means that I didn't quite time it correctly. When you hear that kind of sharper ding sound. That means that I deflect just so, and managed to pull off the deflect correctly with your more kind of dull thud lock sounds. So that's the central kind of mechanic of the game. There are a couple other things to note about the way this game is going to work. Many of them were on display in that fight just there. Namely, the large bars at the top left and top center of the screen. Those are the enemy's health and posture meters, respectively. And I'll continue to point this out as we go into our next boss battle. So the posture meter will fill based on how I'm deflecting, as well as any damage that I deal. The ultimate goal of the boss fight is to reduce the enemy's health gauge to 0, of course, before they can do the same to you. However, the posture meter enables you to do that in a way that doesn't just involve damaging their health. You can see as I'm just exchanging blows with the boss here. When I'm deflecting her, when I'm attacking her and she's blocking me, she takes a bit of posture damage. If I fill that posture meter, I can do what the game calls a death blow, and which will basically kill the boss regardless of her health. So you can see here she has a lot of health, but her posture meter's full, so I can just end that phase. So regardless of how much health they have, if I fill the posture gauge, the entire fight is kind of over. You can see in the top left, the boss has a red dot above their health bar. That is going to represent like how many phases the boss has, and the game plays with that a little bit sometimes. You can see it doing so just a moment ago, where it pretended this boss only had one phase when she actually has two. And you can see an interesting little element here, which is that Lady Butterfly has, if I even just let up on her for just a second or two, her posture doesn't refill, kind of. It recovers very quickly. Different bosses will have sort of different recovery speeds as far as their posture meter goes. However, unanimously it is the case that if I damage their health, their posture will recover slower. So when you have a boss like Lady Butterfly who has very high posture recovery, the dominant strategy should be to deal a lot of health damage, and there are a couple ways to actually kind of guarantee that you're doing that, but I'm not doing a good job of it here. Deal a lot of health damage, and then once her posture stops recovering so quickly, to then do what I'm doing now and engage with her over and over until the posture fills. There's another fight later on where I will give a better example of going after an enemy's health, because I don't want to deal with all of their posture recovery from the beginning of the battle. With Lady Butterfly, her attack patterns are simple enough that I don't really mind just kind of mixing it up right from the start and staying right in her face. This boss, I really enjoy Genichiro, that we're about to fight here. He's got a rather small posture gauge, and if you can just stay right in his face the whole time, he struggles to not get posture broken pretty quickly. Now, just as the boss has a posture gauge, so do I. That's at the bottom center. And if that fills for me, it can have disastrous consequences in the same way that the boss filling their posture gauge can have. I also have a health bar in the bottom left, and I also have several lives in the bottom left right above my health bar, in much the same way that the boss has several phases listed up above his health bar. lot of bosses will have those type of moves. See, there you go. I filled my posture gauge, and then my block broke, and then the boss was able to get a couple free hits off on me, which in that instance resulted in me dying. The boss has a couple of those types of moves where it gives you that indicator that something really bad's about to happen. There's a couple of different types of moves, as you can see there, that require different responses. And so the player is tasked with actually reading the body language of their opponent and determining what's about to happen. If it's a thrust, you dash into it. If it's a sweep like that one, you jump over it. If it's a grab, you just kind of have to run away or get out of the way. And there are actually a couple other types of perilous attacks, as the game calls them as well, that aren't quite so simply classified. Perfect. Such as that one. The lightning reversal is the response there, where you jump into the air, block the attack, and then attack again while still in the air, thus redirecting the lightning back at your opponent. You saw me do something a couple times there, which was to hold block just for a second, even though no attacks were coming. Your posture meter will refill much quicker if you are holding the block button down, so you'll notice when I get to kind of medium to high posture on my own character that I'll start doing that. In the regular version of the game, that will become really noticeable on New Game Plus, where the game will basically force you to hold block to recover any posture starting on New Game Plus and going forward. So whether or not it helps in the Mortal Journey, because it doesn't always quite play by the same rules as the rest of the base game does, I'm not totally sure, but either way I'm just kind of in the habit of doing it. The Guardian Ape is definitely one of my least favorite fights in the game. I find its movements are some of the hardest to read and time up, and it results in me taking a lot of hits that I don't feel like I normally would if I had a better read on what the boss was doing, but it just kind of flails around a lot of the time. Oh, that was a better parrying effort, deflecting effort on my part. You can kind of get too close to the boss when he does his sweep, such that you jump into his chin and don't jump over the sweep when he goes for it. So that's a little bit of a risk with playing that boss as up in his face as I did there. Not usually something that I would advise necessarily. The second phase I actually find so much easier, just because you really only have to look at his sword. He does have one attack here, which is that one right there, that's quite dangerous. The trigger for that one, though, is just that that's the only attack that he really does that involves him moving his left arm. So if you see that arm move at all, you know that that one's about to come, and then you can just get out of the way. If you read it fast, you can run straight backwards. That's not technically optimal. His hitbox for that attack extends in front of him quite far, but behind him almost not at all. So if you're close enough, the best thing to do is actually to run straight behind him. You can kind of see it in the water there, where the Um, the ripples were not extending very far behind him, but quite far in front of him. Well-known trick in this phase to use the spear when he gets stunned to deal a bunch of posture damage every time. Oh, timed that up poorly. And just like that, the fight is over. The Corrupted Monk, here we go. This is what I was referencing earlier as the fight that'll be a better example of me wearing down vitality before I go after posture. So I'm going to equip the Long Spark and use that to repeatedly stun the boss for a second, land a couple of hits. Because you'll notice this boss's posture recovers extremely quickly at the start of the fight. I quite like this boss, as I do most of them to be honest, but especially right after the Guardian Ape, which is a bit of a mess. The moveset is quite interesting. She has a lot of attacks. Her Naginata is a little bit different than the kind of sword duels that you get used to through the rest of the game. The timing on it is a little bit different and allows her to pull off some types of moves that you don't see from a lot of the other bosses. Look at that posture recovery, right? Until you get her to about half health, this is just, you're just not really gonna do much to her posture. So I will use the Shinobi Firecrackers essentially as much as I can until I run out, which we're about halfway out. I would like to be further into her health bar by now, to be honest, but that's fine. If I'm just playing purely on my own time, I often won't use Firecrackers here, and I'll just enjoy this fight for all it is and just slowly wear her down. But I figure you guys might not all enjoy watching me fight this boss for 20 minutes, so we'll speed things along just a little bit. See, now we're getting to the point where I can stop exchanging a little bit and posture recovery is ridiculous. So and we should be fine. Perfect. Good stuff. Like that fight a lot. And I hope you did too, because there's another version of it just a little bit later. So, strap in for that. Upon playing this game for the first time when it released initially, this was definitely my favorite boss in the game. I don't really consider him challenging enough for where he is in the game anymore, but that's probably more a me thing than a problem with the game. I think the Owl is a very interesting fight, because while many of the bosses share a lot of mechanics which we discussed earlier, the Owl is definitely the closest thing that you get in the game to a mirror match, where his abilities mimic the players very closely. and there's a couple, two in fact, buffed versions of the owl that we will fight over the course of the rest of this mortal journey. And those mirror match crawlers will only become stronger as we go on. But you can already see he's using shurikens, he's using firecrackers, he's using the debuff charm that if it lands on me will cause me to be unable to heal for, I believe it's 30 seconds. That one is vaguely reminiscent of like a weapon art. And in the subsequent fights, he'll get like explicitly weapon arts that are exactly the same as ones that you have. Normally, if I fill up my posture gauge all the way, the boss will just kind of hit me. If you fill it up all the way in front of the owl, he will actually do like a death blow to you that will mimic what you do to a boss when they run out of posture. If you try to thrust attack at him, which is not something that I think you've seen me do to any of the bosses so far, maybe once or twice, he will do the Mikiri counter to you in the same way that you can step into enemy thrusts to counter them. So yeah, there's just a lot about this fight that mimics the player's moveset and mechanics in very explicit ways. Which does make narrative sense, as the Shinobi Owl is of course the person who trained the protagonist in the ways of the Shinobi. I think the poison can't kill me, but I'm not totally sure. Yep, it can. Cool. Alright. I quite enjoy this boss arena for the most part, and the game does too. There's actually a bunch of boss fights that take place right in this room. When I played initially, and I was a little bit more jumpy, or wasn't quite as aggressive in my playstyle as I am now, I remember I used to get caught on those doors quite a bit, like in between the outside part of the door and the wall, if that makes sense. Or in between the two doors. And if you get caught up on the level geometry, the camera doesn't really take care of you very well. And I remember that getting me killed a bunch of times when I was first starting out. But I suppose that's just another way that the game encourages you to not run away from your opponents or to work around them, but to just stand in front of them, parry their attacks, land your own, and not get backed into the corner in between the doors and the wall. Okay, so we said earlier that the Guardian Ape was one of my least favorite fights. This one is definitely my least favorite fight. Maybe not in the whole game anymore, but definitely in the Mortal Journey. I won't lie, this is probably the most dangerous part of this playthrough. Because if this doesn't go well, yeah, dying here is potentially extremely easy when the second phase begins. The first phase is no real trouble, just the second phase from the first fight again. You'll notice that we don't use the spear trick on it this time though, and that's because I need all of my spirit emblems, which are the currency you can see in the bottom right hand side of my screen, that allows me to use my shinobi tools. I need to save all 20 of them for the start of the second phase. Not quite the start of the second phase, but for the second phase. Because the goal is going to be to stun the brown ape who drops in pretty close to immediately, and then kill it before it really has a chance to do anything. If you don't do that, yeah, this fight's a disaster. And you'll just be running circles around the arena until you eventually die, probably, looking for increasingly small openings between the concurrent movesets of the two apes. But if I can kind of isolate the brown one, you'll see that I can just dump all of my firecrackers, and it doesn't have a ton of posture necessarily. It will recover fast because it'll be at full health, but I'll have a second or two where I can get a death blow and basically win the fight. So the thing that we want to do, if we can, is we want to bait the scream attack, because that one has a very long kind of cooldown, or end lag, as it were, for the white ape, where it'll be left immobile for quite some time once it starts that animation, and I can lure the brown ape over to the other side of the arena, and hopefully kill it. Probably we shouldn't have gone for it, but we're going for it anyways. Alright. And then we just fight the white monkey normally. We even have a couple spirit emblems left, so we can get the spear going. Perfect. In the base game, right, this fight is really not all that bad. It's just that for the purpose of the mortal journey, the enemies are all tremendously buffed, such that they really all do about as much damage as each other. Because the mortal journey assumes that you're going to have like a fully maxed out stat spread by the time that you do this. I don't think you can unlock this mortal journey until at least New Game +1, because you need to get like the normal ending and the Shura ending, I believe, before you can access this particular game mode. So it assumes that you're going to have kind of maxed out health, maxed out posture, quite a bit of damage. For that reason, damage is regulated. You don't get as much damage as you have in the base game. For me, I think that number is like 41, my damage stat currently. But that gets, regardless of what that is in the actual game, I get a set amount for this game mode so that I can't do 1,000 New Game Plus cycles and just one-shot every boss. But the same is applied to the bosses, is what I was trying to say, is what the genesis of this long-winded point was. That the bosses all have kind of regulated damage, such that those bosses there do tremendously more damage in this game mode than they do in the base game. So that fight's much tougher here than it is in the base game. And this is another good example of a fight wherein the context is kind of changed by being part of the mortal journey rather than being in the base game. In the base game, Emma is pretty dangerous because you have a really tough boss right behind her. And so you want to avoid any like damage or health resources that are used because you need to save those for Ishin. Where here, I'm going to get a chance to rest at a sculptor in between fighting Emma and fighting Ishin. So it's not quite as stressful or demanding of me to play this fight perfectly. I don't do the Shura ending. I would guess most players don't really list it as their preferred ending path. I think I've only done it like twice, so I have actually very little experience fighting Emma and Old Man Ishin. Probably the least of any two bosses in this game, because really the only times that I fight them are when I'm doing a Mortal Journey run like this. So if my play doesn't look quite as confident against these two, that will be why. I still think we did okay there. I only healed twice, didn't die. Yeah, I'm alright with that. That right there is kind of Ishin's central trick, is that if you attack him while he's neutral, he will dodge and then counterattack, and if you're not ready for it, he will use that move, and he really only needs that one to just burn the heck out of your healing resources. So I'm always very careful to only attack once and then wait to see if he dodges or not. Because if not, like this, I can kind of keep rallying with him, but otherwise I need to be ready to respond in some other way if he does go into his counter. As is usually the case when fighting Ishin, Phase 1 is not too bad, and Phase 2 is the real boss. This move right here, before the Waterfowl Dance, was quite possibly the most oppressive move that From Software had ever designed. See, I didn't follow my own rule there, and I paid for it, didn't I? Oh, dang. Kinda lucked out on the defense there, to be honest. So if there's a good defense to this attack, I'm not aware of it. I just kind of do what comes naturally and hope it works out. Sometimes it does, sometimes I get roasted. Wants to do that one for a little while, huh? Okay. That also didn't go too bad. Right on.
Sekiro, it was not to be.
So I played this game on stream a while ago, like a month or two now, and yeah, I really haven't played it since then. I did like one warm-up round against the final boss of the Mortal Journey, which is also Ishin, but that's the only practice that I've had since I started. So given that, and that I'm like live narrating this as I'm doing it, which usually decreases my efficacy, I think this is going pretty well. When I played this last month, when I was like way more in practice, I think I died to... I can't remember for sure if I died to Gyobu or not, but I know I died to the owl, and it was... Oh, damn. I died to the owl, and it was in the same fight where I opened up that particular section by calling him, I think, like, trivially easy, and then he killed me. So, yeah. Wasn't my proudest moment, for sure. Comparatively, this run's going quite well. So outside of the end game bosses, like the Inner Owl Father, Sword Saint Ishin, this is definitely a top tier fight for me. It's the same moveset from earlier that I already mentioned was really interesting, but this setting is just gorgeous. And then this fight also incorporates a couple interesting tricks. When this happens, you jump up, look down, lock on, find the real one, do a death blow. And you can just kind of skip the second phase. This third phase adds the centipede head, and it has a very dangerous attack that it can now do to me. And I'm sure that Lady Yao, there it is, will be happy to demonstrate. So she gives you the perilous attack icon, and then spits a bunch of kind of bile or leeches or something at you. When they land, they inflict a status ailment on you called Fear, and if the fear meter fills all the way, that's just instant death. Which, you know, mimics real life when you get really scared. You just die, so... And you can see the teleport is... I don't know, maybe I'm the only one who feels that way. I feel like it's a little bit deceptive about what's about to come at you. Like, the raised hand kinda suggests that she's about to throw the hand at you. But I also don't feel like it's totally clear, and it does happen quite fast. As long as you don't, like, jump straight up, usually you're okay. Well... maybe I should just stop talking. Maybe I should just not say anything. I always like that he sheathes the Odachi through the scabbard rather than through the opening of the scabbard at the top. He just phases it right into his back. And if I could do that, I would too. Katana and their ilk are kind of hard to put away sometimes. If you can, try to keep note of some of the patterns that you're going to see in this fight. We're going to fight Owl Father again a little later. And I think... it's one of the... I think it's the best of the three inner fights, in the way that it mixes up a lot of what you get used to during this fight. I'll comment more on what I mean when we get there. Oh. Got me, didn't ya? If you're right up close to him when he goes into that one, what I just did there is kind of the best timing that I've figured out. Just attack, attack, dodge. If you dodge too early, he'll cancel out of that overhead into a different, like, sweeping move that'll usually catch you. And if you get too greedy on your attacks, you'll eat the overhead slam and take a ton of damage. So... two quick hits, dodge. This fight's already quite good because I think the first owl fight is pretty good. And this is just kind of a better version thereof. He does that like double shuriken overhead slam jump move a lot less, which is kind of the most easily punishable attack. The developers were clearly aware of that because his usage of it in this fight is way toned down. He fights generally a lot more aggressively, but at the same time he doesn't have access to all the same tools that he did at that point in the story. This fight takes place within the timeline of the game a couple years ago. So it makes sense that he would have picked up some new tools in that time, dropped some old tools, that type of thing. Gotten a little bit older, a little less agile. I got confused on Owl. The owl loves to do that, where it goes right through you and tries to get behind you, so when that happens, the play is to just kind of unlock the camera and just run straight through its path, such that you end up on the other side of the map to where he's trying to pop out. Let me know in the comments if you noticed the part where I took my hand off the controller for a second there. So he'll come right through me. So we just go opposite of the direction that it flew, and we're good. Perfect. Not perfect, we did have to heal the once, but one time is not bad for a boss that tricky. Hopefully we do about as good on the further buffed version a little later. Ooh. Okay. So the Demon of Hatred requires... I kind of think of this fight as being a test of your ability to play this game a little bit like an RPG. And if you have the right items, this fight is not really as bad as it gets made out to be sometimes. If you don't have the right items or aren't good at using them, this fight is kind of a nightmare. Nico's orange, run away, jump up, and grappling hook back in. Okay, now that attack right there feels a lot like bullshit, and it kind of is, but it's not quite as much as it seems like. That attack has a very good idea of where you are, but it doesn't actually, like, throw further or nearer, depending on where you are. It throws to a consistent distance each time. It's just, the game has you timed up really well, as far as... walked right into that one. As far as when it's going to use that fireball attack. So if you just... he'll use it most of the time when there's a lot of distance between you and you're kind of running into him to close that distance back. So if you just hesitate an extra second partway into the run, or if you get in really fast, then that attack will whiff every time. Or, if you're lazy and don't want to figure out the timing, you can use the Lotus Umbrella like I'm doing. The Lotus Umbrella will block all of his fire attacks, and if you time it with the same timing that you normally do a deflect on, you'll even do posture damage. You can see me do some right there. The trick to the early phase of this fight is to get through the first two phases with enough spirit emblems left that you can use the malcontent in the third phase. And we're basically going to skip the third phase. Or try to. So to that end we need to preserve spirit emblems, because the malcontent right does use quite a bit of them with each cast. So I certainly could be using the umbrella more often than I am, but I'm trying to use it sparingly to preserve my spirit emblems for the third phase. Whew, that was close. I tried to grapple hook in, but I didn't quite have the timing. When he does this one, just run a lap. All good. Beautiful. Okay. Ugh. So you just whistle a couple of times, then stagger him. He comes out of the stagger, we whistle again. And you can only stun him with the whistle 3 times. Okay. But we're pretty happy with that. And we have a few Spirit Emblems left for Lotus Umbrellas. Perfect. Didn't even need them. Great. So yeah, I think if you know what you're doing, I think that's a better fight than it's sometimes made out to be, where people list it as just kind of this disaster that like doesn't work with the game's mechanics at all. But I don't quite agree. I think it just requires you to play a little bit differently than most of them do, and that's still a fair criticism that you can make, that that fight isn't really as prepared for you to tackle it, like just deflects and attacks like I'm doing pretty much everything else. Which is a bit of a shame, although that is technically, you can pull that off, and I've done it before. I'm just not quite as stubborn in my old age as I once was, perhaps. This is your, within the, oh, bad job by me. Within the plotline of the game, this is the 3rd time that you've dueled with Genichiro, and by this point, even though he has gotten stronger, he has not caught back up to your power level, and you kind of crush him, and it's meant to be very easy. Not terribly much to say about that particular encounter, unfortunately. It does lead into, and you have to fight him every time before you re-challenge the final boss of the game, which is Ishin the Sword Saint, which is Ishin who we fought earlier, but summoned back to life at his prime. He maintains a lot of the same combos and attacks that he had when we fought him earlier. Though he's a little bit more aggressive, he's a little bit faster. And he does not have that tricky dodge move anymore. If you take the Shura ending, the earlier version of Ishin that we fought is actually the final boss that you'll fight in a given playthrough. I would suggest a lot of the time that's going to be harder than this version of Ishin, because at that point you're only about halfway through the game, so you just don't have as many shinobi tools, you don't have as many levels and skills that you can have by the time you get to this point in the game, where you've done the whole game proper. Ishin's combos are fairly relentless, and they come with an odd little delay in timing a lot of the time. He has a lot of attacks to throw at you, so it's difficult to kind of just trade with him the way that I've done with some other bosses. They're technically still possible. So the saving grace for this fight, as far as the player is concerned, is that there are opportunities to do really significant things, and they're fairly telegraphed and easy to come by. Now that combo that you saw right there, where he will kind of like, where he'll pull out his flintlock or musket, or Tanagashima, that's what I'm looking for, fire off a volley at you, and then he'll often end that with this sweep, or that stab, rather. Which is, you can hit him with the Mikiri counter, just like this, and do a bunch of posture damage all at once. His posture also does not recover especially quickly. You'll notice that I left him alone there for quite a while. He really didn't recover very much, even though he's at pretty high health. So those thrusts, those... oh, damn, he killed me! That's crazy. We made it so far! We were at the end of the base game. Oh well. Those thrusts, those other perilous attacks that he'll do, give you a great opportunity to do a bunch of posture damage to him all at once, and then bank that for quite a little while in his posture meter. The third phase is similar in that he'll add lightning attacks, which are quite easy to use the lightning reversal counter on, and deal a bunch of vitality and posture damage back to him every time he tries to do one of those, which lets the third phase be probably the easiest of the three phases even. I've spoken at length about their mechanics now, and I don't necessarily have too much to say about that that I haven't already, though if I think of anything I will. So I'll take this opportunity to maybe mention some of the lore surrounding some of the bosses, because in something of a departure from Software's usual kind of storytelling, the story in this game is really quite laid out for you, and the characterization of many of the figures in it is much more explicit and clearly detailed. Even Gyobu here. Now obviously I'm playing the game, fighting him, and don't actually have any of this in front of me, but without checking or thinking about it hard, I can tell you that he's using the spear that was given in the intro cutscene, I should say. You see Ishin fighting in a war against the guy who he refers to as General Tamara. He's locked in single combat with General Tamara. There's this large... Wow. What the move. I don't know that I've seen that one before. So Ishin is fighting General Tamara in single combat, and Ishin uses the Mikiri counter, and eventually ends up killing General Tamara, and announces that to the rest of the battlefield, which seems to kind of end or halt the battle. Gyobu is using the same spear that General Tamara is using in that intro cutscene. And it's also the same spear that Ishin uses when he fights you at the end of the game. So we can imagine that it must have been a great sign of respect for Ishin to hand off the spear of a former foe, and a spear that Ishin clearly also uses, to Gyobu. Gyobu is not necessarily announced this way, but I believe he is also considered one of the 7 Ashina Spears, who are an interesting kind of group that you see a couple of the members thereof over the course of the game. You can tell that his horse is named Onikage. When he dies, he begs Genichiro to forgive him. We know that he was not originally from Ashina. He was a bandit in the lands nearby and was defeated in battle by Ishin and then vowed to serve him. Although when he dies, it's actually Gyobu, or... Oh, am I not in the Mortal Journey anymore? Oh, damn. Alright. Well, I guess we're not going through the whole thing again. We'll just go back to here. It's Genichiro whose forgiveness he begs, not Ishin, so that can maybe be taken as a sign that his loyalties have shifted a little bit during his time serving the Ashina clan. And so even just with the kind of small details that we have about some of the characters, you can piece together or be told explicitly quite a bit about many of the personalities, even for relatively minor characters like Yobu. One of the strengths of this game, I think, compared to the other From Software games, is that stronger aspect of characterization. Because of the greater emphasis on narrative and characters compared to the other Dark Souls or Bloodborne games. You can see it's the same like lopsided crescent spear that Kyoto was just using a moment ago. Wow. I did not think the game would let me get away with jumping over the thrust there. Sure which one he was going to do there. I guessed wrong. Oh, damn. Okay. 0 for 2. Right on. Camera did me no favors there. Alas. So the funny thing is, I have actually beat the Mortal Journey, just I haven't done it on stream, and it looks like tonight's not going to be the night either, in spite of a handful of attempts now. But to save you all some boredom, I'm going to I'll just do the fights that I would normally do from the reflection menu rather than from the journey menu, so you don't have to see me fight everybody a second time, assuming I made it through everybody again, and you didn't have to see me go through a third time. I like the way that phase went. So another way the game encourages you, apologies for the long break in commentary there, just trying to focus a little bit. I would hate to go 0 for 3 against any foe, really. But, my posture meter almost got full there, you probably noticed. There is a way to save yourself from that situation becoming really dire if you play really, really well, which is a facet of the gameplay that I really appreciate. Good play is just almost always rewarded. Which is that if my posture meter is full, it will not break on a deflect. So even if my posture meter is absolutely full, as long as I'm deflecting, I can't ever get posture broken. If that makes sense. I don't think there's been a good example of what I'm referring to, but you can kind of imagine if my posture meter is full up, but I managed to pull off, hopefully, just a couple deflections such that the boss's combo ends, and then I have time to take a step back and hold block and recover that posture. But as long as I'm playing well and deflecting, then I don't have to get posture broken on their attacks. Okay, here come the 3 inner versions of the fights. These are quite interesting buffed versions of some of the main bosses that got added to the game after release in the same update where this boss rush gauntlet mode was added, where this boss reflection mode was added, where they added a couple other pieces of content, and almost had a good example there. So an interesting facet of this fight, if you heal while in kind of a neutral state with Kenichiro, he'll pull out his bow. He can't really shoot you with it. At that distance he might have been able to hit me, but for the most part, if you just heal normally and then just hold block, he won't really usually be able to get you. I see a lot of players panic when he does that and assume they need to do something and like end up stressed and kind of dodging poorly and then taking that arrow straight to the face. But as long as you just stay calm and just respond well, as in not panicked, you'll be okay. Just like that. When you beat Inner Genichiro for the first time, you get that it's called the Lotus Dance, I believe, the big move where he jumps into the air and comes around 3 times and slashes at me. It's quite a powerful move. It does cost a spirit emblem, so I don't tend to use it. That one right there. And the trick with it on his end, when he's using it on me, is that I need to deflect all 3 blows. If I just block them, I'll still take damage. And I believe that applies to when you use it against regular enemies. If they attempt to block it, it'll still do damage as well. That is the, I think, only real gameplay-centric reward that you get for clearing any of the post-release content. There are a couple of skins that you can get as well, although... oh boy. Although they're purely cosmetic and don't actually factor into contributing to gameplay whatsoever. Oh, I forgot about the double reversal. Oh man, that's good. That's one of the mechanics that the inner version of Genichiro gets, where he has also now learned the lightning reversal, and if you try to throw lightning back at him, he gets a chance to throw it back at you. You can reverse his reversal, and you'll get him during that third volley. I'll try to demonstrate better this time. The first phase of this fight didn't really go well, so it's good that we get a shot at redemption here anyways. I don't tend to love to use it, but Genichiro is one of the better examples of it. There's a, I think not quite intended mechanic by which if you put a small delay in between some of your attacks, the boss has trouble figuring out what you're doing a lot of the time, and you'll see them just kind of lock up. I did it briefly at the beginning of that phase, but with Genichiro, he'll often kind of step back and pull out his bow, but not really fast enough for him to shoot at you. And so you can just delay by half to a quarter of a second, and then you'll kind of repeatedly catch him in between. Kind of did it there. That wasn't the best example, but that's kind of what I was talking about. I don't tend to try to use it very often because I don't really feel like it's an intended mechanic. And I'd just rather beat this like skill-based game based on the actual skills that the game wants to test me on. Much better first two phases. Alright. I'm not certain, but I've always felt like he has even less posture in this third phase, which I think is because he took off all of his armor, and therefore doesn't get like the... I don't think there's actually any like armor value in this game, but I think they made his posture meter a little bit smaller, or a little bit faster to fill, on account of the fact that he's not wearing his armor anymore. If I'm right about that, I think that's kind of cool. I'm not sure that I am right about that, that's just a feeling that I have. So yeah, from getting utterly annihilated to only healing once through that fight. Alright. I see what kind of night it's gonna be. We've only got two more bosses now. Inner Owl Father, and then of course Inner Ashina to finish off the evening. Okay, earlier, a long time ago now, I told you to remember what you could about that fight. Now the first thing that I want to point out has already happened. When you do this fight the first time, when he does that backflip that he did to start out, he'll throw a shuriken. And he'll do that during the first time that you meet him as well. And he doesn't do that here. And so what's interesting is that he kind of conditions you not to be on the defensive when he does that, and then in the second phase he will go back to throwing that shuriken again after he backflips. You can see he's also added another shinobi tool to his arsenal, form of the Mistraven feathers. This is a little bit of a difficult concept to wrap your mind around, and it's hard for me to explain, but when he does that, the timings on his combos are not different from normal. They're just obscured by the animation, but if you know the timing, you've seen him do that attack where he kind of rolls backwards and then faces you and then slashes twice. It's the same combo that he's doing right there. It's just that there's this additional flourish in the form of the animation that makes you think that something else is happening. But you've seen that combo and you know the timing of it. It's just obscured. And really that applies to a lot of the tricky stuff that he does. This is another one that is different. When you fight Owl Father in the base game, when he does that move, you always jump over it. In this version, you can sometimes throw it sideways, so you have to dash out of the way rather than always necessarily jumping over it. Good tool to use there is just to look for the perilous attack indicator, and if you see it, then you have to jump, and if you don't see it, then you have to dodge sideways. And that way you don't have to try to read the direction of the owl necessarily. Or the fire spell is at work. Cool. That went pretty well. I consider that boss much harder than Inner Genichiro, but I tend to perform better against him than I do against Genichiro. Inner Ashin is, or Inner Ishin, Ashina, getting his names mixed up. My bad. Inner Ishin is pretty close to indistinguishable from his regular fight. That was interesting. I've never seen him not go straight into that before. In that he already has so many combos and mix-ups and attacks that you don't know what his moveset is. You don't have any idea. You're just going off of instinct and reacting to what he does, which is the same rule that you have to follow when you fight the inner version, because he just has even more combos and mix-ups and moves. By and large, though, it's the same basic structure, in that you fight him with just his sword, and then his sword and spear, and then in the third phase with lightning. And the same kind of large openings will present themselves if you just play well and calmly and look for those opportunities. Flawless first phase, you'd like to see it. A little too greedy there, and didn't read that correctly whatsoever. That attack looks really scary, it's really just a thrust, and you can Mikiri counter it just like you do any other thrusts. I just didn't do a good job of spacing it out there. Just like that. I'm not sure if that's technically the optimal response to when he does any of his kind of big wind sweep moves, but it works for me more often than it doesn't, and it allows me to usually get a hit or two off, so. If it works, and that's really the message that you should take from this video generally, is that just do whatever works for you, you know? Clearly I like to play relying very little on shinobi prosthetics and items and whatnot, but I will use them occasionally, as you've seen me do. But I prefer to just kind of use the core mechanics when I can. And that works for me. That's how I have fun. That's what gives me a sense of challenge, but also accomplishment when I overcome it. If there's a different formula for you, maybe you enjoy using shinobi tools and trying to make like the most cinematic battles that you possibly can. You know, really timing up the shinobi axe or the spear to coincide with enemy moves and whatnot. And if that's how you like to play, awesome. If you like to use a lot of items and just chew through buffs and whatnot to make yourself unkillable, that's totally valid too. Just do whatever you're gonna enjoy. Just do whatever you're gonna, whatever's gonna get you to get the job done. Most of the strategies that you're seeing me use, I have actually watched other people play this game very little. Outside of maybe one or two of these responses that you're seeing me do, pretty much everything that you're seeing me do was something that I devised, or a timing that I felt out. Like, nobody ever taught me to do that. But it works for me. And it's a response that I can consistently make the read on and turn to my advantage. So my point is, right, if you're playing this game and you're struggling, because it is quite a steep learning curve, if you just keep going and you just try to learn, you just try to learn from your mistakes, you try to learn what you can of the encounters, you eventually can overcome it. And you can do it, excuse me, you can do it with a playstyle that's all your own. Really, this game is pretty open when it comes to what is and isn't effective, in spite of the lower number of kind of available tools to you in this game relative to the other From Software games, where you have many different weapons and items and Elden Ring spirit summons and all manner of things. The total number of options to do in this game is much smaller. Even still, there's a variety of different things that you can do to respond to most situations that present themselves to you. watching me fight this boss and watching another player with the similar level of experience and time logged in this game might look very different. But both are equally valid. Alright. We've done it. That is Inner Ishin, and that is every boss from the Mortal Journey. We didn't quite manage to succeed in beating the Mortal Journey this time either, and that's a little bit of a disappointment for myself personally, because I was hoping that we would manage it, but alas, that's okay. So yeah, I guess we're going to end the stream there. Thank you for watching. I hope if you play this game, maybe you picked up a few tips and tricks. Maybe if you don't yet play this game, maybe this playthrough encouraged you to give it a try. I think you'll love it. I think there's so much to like about this game. It has just been a source of pretty close to endless interest and fascination for me ever since it came out. And it is by far the FromSoft game that I have played through from start to finish the most times, because it's just relatively short and brief and hits hard and gets over in a pretty manageable number of hours, but the gameplay depth is such that you can come back to it over and over and over and continually find new things. There were several attacks tonight that I suggested that I maybe hadn't seen before, or at least hadn't seen in a long time, such that I didn't remember them. And I've been playing this game for years, so there's so much to like about this game. And that's just from a gameplay perspective. Again, I think the characters are really good in this game. I think the story is actually quite good in this game. Just think about picking it up, maybe, if you haven't already. Okay, that's going to do it for me. Thank you for watching if you did. I hope you have an excellent rest of your evening. I hope you enjoyed the stream a little bit. Take care of yourselves. Do something nice for yourself. And I will see you next time.